Greetings, my friends. Hurricane Ida is the latest of God's 11 judgments over the past 40 years on the U.S. for cursing Israel. The number 11 is important in that it can symbolize disorder, chaos, and judgment in the Bible. Number 11 is used 24 times, and 11th can be found 19 times. Mentioned 146 times in Scripture, the number 40 symbolizes a period of testing, trial, and probation, which America has definitely been under God's testing, trials, and probation for the last 40 years. And America is the former America, now no America, is done. God is getting ready to judge us in such a terrible way, you wouldn't even believe it. Let's go over the last 11 times that America, the former America, has been judged terribly for cursing Israel. The last time the U.S. government refused to veto an anti-Israel resolution at the UN Security Council was in 1979 on March 22nd. The Carter administration chose not to veto UN Resolution 446. 4 days later, the Egypt-Israel peace treaty was signed in Washington. As a result of that treaty, Israel gave up tremendous amounts of land. 2 days later, on March 28th, the worst nuclear power plant disaster in U.S. history made headlines all over the globe. On October 30th, 1991, President George H.W. Bush opened the Madrid Peace Conference, which brought Israelis and Palestinians together to negotiate for the very first time. In his opening speech, Bush told Israel that territorial compromise is essential for peace. Give up land. At the exact same time, the perfect storm was brewing in the North Atlantic. This legendary storm traveled 1,000 miles the wrong direction and sent 35-foot waves slamming directly into President Bush's home in Kennebunkport, Maine. The third time, on August 3rd, 23rd, 92, the Madrid Peace Conference moved to Washington, D.C., and the very next day, Hurricane Andrew made landfall in Florida, causing $30 billion in damage. It was the worst natural disaster up to that time in U.S. history. On January 16, 94, President Clinton met with President Assad of Syria to discuss the possibility of Israel giving up the Golan Heights. Within 24 hours, the devastating Northridge earthquake hit Southern California. It was the second worst natural disaster up to that time in U.S. history. On January 21st, 98, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived at the White House and received a very cold reception. In fact, President Clinton and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright actually refused to have lunch with him. That exact same day, the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke, sending Clinton presidency into a tailspin from which he would never recover. On September 28th of 98, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright was working on finalizing a plan that would have had Israel give up approximately 13% of Judea and Samaria. On that same day, Hurricane George slammed into the Gulf Coast with winds gusts up to 175 miles an hour. On May 3rd, 99, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat was supposed to hold a press conference to declare the creation of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as the capital. On that precise day, the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded in the U.S. ripped through Oklahoma and Kansas. At one point, one of the tornadoes actually had a recorded wind speed of 316 miles per hour. On April 30th of 2003, the roadmap to peace that had been developed by the so-called quartet was presented to Israel Prime Minister Ariel Sharon by U.S. Ambassador Daniel Kurtzer. Over the next 7 days, the U.S. was hit by a staggering 412 tornadoes. It was the largest tornado cluster ever recorded in history. 2005, George W. Bush, the son of George H.W. Bush, convinced Israel that it was necessary to remove all the Jewish settlers out of Gaza and turn it over entirely to the Palestinians. According to the New York Times, the very last of the settlers were evacuated on August 23rd, 2005. On that precise day, a storm that would be given the name Katrina started forming over the Bahamas. The city of New Orleans still not fully recovered from the damage that the storm caused. It still hasn't fully recovered, and it ranked as the costliest natural disaster in all of U.S. history. On May 19, 2011, Barack Obama told Israel that there must be a return to the pre-67 borders. 3 days later, on May 22nd, a half mile wide, get that, half mile, EF5 multiple vortex tornado, the worst you could possibly get, ripped through Joplin, Missouri. It was the costliest single tornado ever in U.S. history. And now, number 11, Biden's anti-covenant policy that divided the land of Israel would inevitably result in a natural catastrophe of historic proportions. That prediction came true this week as Israel Prime Minister Bennett met with President Biden for the first time, and as Bennett flew home, Hurricane Ida made landfall. This prediction was not the result of prescience or prophecy. It was simply the latest in a historical series, so compelling that it verges on absolute certainty. And again, they're saying this hurricane is the worst hurricane to ever hit in the history of hurricanes in the world. My friends, it's obvious what's going on. God's judgment is here. God said in Genesis, I will bless those who bless Israel, and I will curse those who curse Israel. And he means it. And this country of the former America used to be the second apple of God's eye. It loved Israel. It protected Israel. Defended Israel. It nourished Israel. Now it's turned into an anti-Israel, festering hellhole, garbage dump, cesspool, sewage trap. And God is done. God, I'm convinced that God is done with this country. You believe what you want to believe. I go by what I see. And this country is in its last of its last days. It's a terrible place, and it's an anti-Semitic garbage dump. My friends, you need to make sure that you are ready to go to heaven in the imminent rapture. If you're not, you'll be left behind for 7 pure years of hell, where if God didn't intervene, no flesh will remain alive. Billions upon billions upon billions will die grotesque, awful, horrific deaths. Why would you go through all of that? Jesus Christ can save you today. If you're backslidden, you can return to him. If you've never been saved, you're backslidden. Pray the prayer, do the 6 steps I have in a box below the video. No one's guaranteed more time in your life. If you like prayer, contact me. I pray for you every day. I love you all dearly so much. And look up True Christians. Our redemption draweth nigh. We fly soon. May God bless you. Share this video. Get the word out. Help me always spread the word. I'm always sensitive because of my faith. And please wake up. Please understand that this country has just turned into a sewage hole. Anti-Israel. And God will curse us. He's cursing us now. He's just started. Bye.